CM Punk merchandise controversy, WWE accused of leaking bad press, Triple H thinks Solo Sikoa is bad, and more. I'm Luke Owen, and this is the WrestleTalk News.
Support WrestleTalk!
Get exclusive videos over on our Patreon.
But first, let's kick off today's news with that fun topic that some people take far too seriously, the PWI 500. For those of you who might be new to this wonderful pastime, the PWI 500 is a rank of the 500 best wrestlers on the planet, based on a mix of kayfabe and real-life stuff. So, for example, being a world champion or main eventing a big show can bump you up the rankings over someone who's having banger matches day in and day out. Big shout out to Michael Oku, who came 38th, and Memes, who came in at 500. But the real winner is the number one guy, and that number one guy for 2024 is Cody Rhodes. He beat AEW Swerve Strickland, 2nd place, and Will Ospreay 3rd, Seth Rollins in 4th. New Japan's Tetsuya Naito was 5th, Damian Priest was at 6th, MJF at 7, Jon Moxley at 8, Gunther at 9, and Mystico rounds out the top 10. WWE themselves put out a tweet on being the number one spot, saying, "From undeniable to undisputed. What a year for Cody Rhodes. Congratulations to the American Nightmare."
You wanna get sued?
Speaking of controversial things to post online, and there's been a lot of debate amongst wrestling fans about whether or not a blood feud between two wrestlers should be based around friendship bracelets. Now, look, I'm a man who turns 40 next year, and as such, it would be rather easy for me to be sniffy about friendship bracelets, as it's something lame that the young'uns or Gen Zers do. Back in my day, we gave out shag bands and they meant something. Shout out to all the UK kids who went to school in the 1990s. But then, I got given some. This one was made for me by Dan's partner, and she's lovely, and it was such a lovely gesture. And this one was made by a viewer's daughter who wanted to give them to us at All In at Wembley a few weeks back. I can't express genuinely how much this meant to me, and I've legit worn this every day since. I'm not sure if that's what I'm supposed to do with them. I don't know if you're supposed to wear them all the time, but it's what I've done. Gotta remember, I'm nearly 40 and out of touch with these sorts of things. Brat Girl Summer. Slay. So I get the Punk and Drew bracelet thing, and WWE clearly saw an opportunity to monetize it by releasing a version of Punk's friendship bracelet on WWEshop.com. But that friendship bracelet, much like this one, was made for Punk by a fan. And that fan, called Victoria, posted on Twitter, "A heads up would have been nice, lol." She later followed up adding, "I won't be asking for compensation from WWE since they have every right to make bracelets. All I kind of was hoping for was maybe a mention in the description of the product." For those replying to my initial post about me not getting a heads up and saying WWE didn't need to, I 100% agree they didn't need to. Legally, they had no obligation to reach out to me regarding this, but it just would have been nice to have heard about it from them beforehand. WWE did reach out to me last week as a thank you from Punk and invited me to a show next month, but to my knowledge, that invitation had no correlation to them selling bracelets and wasn't offered as compensation, but I am still grateful for them contacting me at all. Responding to the backlash, WWE have pulled the merchandise from WWEshop.com. But it looks like all's well that ends well, as those now directly involved are having fun with the situation. Drew McIntyre, the man who has been the ire of CM Punk and friendship bracelets around the world in 2024, tweeted, "All this bitching and moaning and crying, no wonder CM Punk is your hero." To which Victoria replied, "All my bitching and moaning and crying, and still not as much whining as you've done. You're twice my age and acting half of it, crying with laughter emoji." What do you make of this situation? Do you think that WWE should have given Victoria the heads up? Should they put the bracelets back up on WWEshop.com? Let me know in the comments down below. Speaking of controversy, and there's been a bizarre situation unfolding around AEW and their long gestating TV deal announcement. AEW's TV deal with Warner Bros. Discovery is up this year, but reports are that they've basically figured out a new deal with WBD, which will be announced in the next few weeks. Tony Khan himself has more or less confirmed this. But in an intriguing twist, it was reported by Andrew Zarian that AEW have also had conversations with Fox, the former home of WWE SmackDown. The report was that Fox were keen to keep pro wrestling on their networks as it's easy to sell advertising for it, but it wasn't working out with WWE because SmackDown was too expensive and therefore lost the station money. Ibu of WrestlePurist noted on their Raw Review podcast that the rumor among AEW talent backstage is that Shockwave, which AEW recently trademarked, will be a 1-hour show that will air on FS1. And in all of this reporting, a tweet from Andrew Chapados started getting attention online. Chapados had never tweeted about AEW before September 9th, but put out a tweet claiming that the WBD deal was now on the back foot. He added, on top of Warner's already having about 25% from the original deal, AEW likely had to give up more equity to get the new deal done, and that there was a lack of interest from other networks, which hurt their negotiations, as well as recent controversial moves have hurt the product and its ratings. Those moves being presumably the ending of Swerve and Hangman at All Out and the post-match angle with the Blackpool Combat Club and Bryan Danielson. Chapados' lack of tweets about AEW previously certainly pricked up a few ears, and Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful responded to the tweet, planted at best, outright false at worst. I can tell you in talking to people close to both sides that neither side would be making these claims themselves. What SRS means by planted is that someone, the leading candidate being TKO, fed this story to Chapados to put negative news out there about All Elite Wrestling and their future on TV. This would not be the first time that WWE have been accused of such actions, with some reporters being given the not public but also super expensive to buy fast national numbers for AEW Rampage to put out when the ratings are particularly bad. They may be expensive for regular journalists, but they're not if you're a billion-dollar company looking to make your competition look bad. Sean Ross Sapp has spoken about this practice publicly, but has noted that the person sending him the fast nationals no longer works for WWE. And now someone on Reddit has claimed that they were old friends of Chapados at high school and college, and noted that he and another friend started spinning Backfist, which covered MMA and have connections to UFC, i.e., being on their press list. The poster claims Andrew, by tweeting that false report out of nowhere, may have just accidentally proved the people saying WWE TKO is spreading these false reports to be right, because he was clearly sent this information from his UFC TKO contacts and tweeted it. He adds in his claim, there is no other valid reason, in my opinion, for Andrew to be tweeting things like this, from what I know of him, other than it's something that was passed on to him and he was asked to post/tweet about it. Chapados has also come under fire from wrestling fans following his tweet about the WBD deal, as he then started posting transphobic comments about AEW's Nyla Rose, and his pinned tweet is an interview with the rather controversial Val Venus. That Reddit post is, of course, conjecture. This is just one person's take on the situation, and anecdote is not proof. So what do you think is going on? Let me know in the comments down below. On to much more provable things now, and this is the thing that definitely did happen because I saw it with my own two eyes, and last night's NXT opened with a tag match between Axiom and Nathan Frazier taking on the Street Profits. Corey Brennan of Fightful Select reported ahead of the show that the match was only scheduled to go one segment, which did lead to some speculation online that we could see the debut of the Motor City Machine Guns, which has been on the cards for a while now. But we got someone else instead. The bloodline of Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Jacob Fatu ran in to cause the DQ. Now, this likely isn't an NXT invasion by the bloodline, but rather a continuation of the feud between the group and the Street Profits over the tag titles, though Nathan Frazier has officially offered his and Axiom services to Roman Reigns in order to take on the bloodline. What it is another sign of, however, is WWE loading up NXT with main roster stars ahead of its debut on the CW. CM Punk has been announced for the debut episode, which will take place from Chicago, and will be joined by The Miz and Women's Tag Team Champions Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. Ethan Page will defend the NXT Championship against Trick Williams, and Roxanne Perez defends the NXT Women's Championship against Julia. CM Punk has also been announced for next week's edition of NXT. Notable by his absence in that NXT angle, however, was Solo Sikoa. He will be challenging Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship in a steel cage match on the USA Network Return for SmackDown, which reportedly was once a Bad Blood match but moved to TV, with a new report suggesting that Rhodes will instead face Jacob Fatu at the pay-per-view instead. And Ibu of WrestlePurist may have noted why that is on their recent podcast. He said, with regards to Solo Sikoa, Triple H thinks he's like kind of bad, but it doesn't matter. He's a member of the family. He's a member of the Samoan family. They have put so much time and resources into pushing him, and so you kind of have to see it through, so you have to continue to follow it up a little bit. Plus, beyond that, Roman Reigns will not allow for them to bury his cousin. This ties into a report from WrestleVotes from a few months ago, which said that WWE were holding off on the Jacob Fatu debut in fear of him overshadowing Solo Sikoa. Now, if you missed yesterday's WrestleTalk news, Pete Quinnell made the very sad announcement that he will be leaving us after 5 and a bit years, and we invite you to come and say goodbye with us on a special episode of the WrestleTalk podcast today at 3 p.m. BST. There's a link for it in the video description. We'll see you all then. And to say goodbye to Pete on the Monday Night Wars as we start a new series over on Patreon, you can watch the Draft Day episode for free right now over on YouTube.